It's NCAA tournament week, and it is time to catch up with our guy, Mike LaTulip, who had a really nice selection Sunday, doubly nice, as both his Illini and Wright State Raiders make the field. Mike, how you feel? You got two teams representing here.
Yeah, and then too, John Gross, my college coach as well, is dancing, and that's the beauty of you have all these relationships, you develop all these relationships over the years, and to see some of those guys dance, and there's even just beyond that, just the people that I've gotten close to. Brian Cooley was one of my assistant coaches at Wright State. He's the assistant at Colorado State now. Gets a 6 seed. Across the board, it's really nice to see those guys dance. Scott Nagy getting another shot as well, and he does a heck of a job. And then obviously Illinois. It's great to see them dance. We talked about before where these. Now it's 4 seed, 5 seed. What's it going to be? And 2012 to 2016, we were talking bubble most of the time. So it's amazing how the narrative shifts, and it's going to be fun. I don't know what it is about this year. I think there's already been some carnage throughout the season, and I think you're going to see a little bit of the same in the NCAA tournament. Yeah. You just got to hope it's not your team,
That's right. Well, we all know it was last year, and that's why we'll address the anxiety around this program, especially the fan base. But I want to get into a little bit of the team of the Indiana loss in the Big Ten tournament. But just, Mike, right away, your thoughts on the draw, get 13 seed Chattanooga. I know you know Malachi Smith pretty well from, he transferred from Wright State, which you know really well. And Silvio DeSouza is there. Baptiste hit some threes. So what do you think about the first round draw and potentially beyond that?
I think the psychology is always interesting for the 3 through 7 seeds. Every 3 through 7 seed sits there with a ton of anxiety and says, oh man, well, this team, because here's the reality. Either you're likely playing a really good mid-major team, or you're playing if you get to more of like the 5, 6, 7, you're playing a high major team that's either skid late, but is still capable, or a high major team like Virginia Tech that's just rolling into the tournament on this torrid stretch. It's the NCAA tournament. It doesn't matter who you're playing. Everyone's good. Everyone's good. Everybody has a right to be there. And your dreams are not bigger than other people's dreams. Everybody has dreams of cutting down the nets. And I think that's the first mistake. When you sit there thinking that, we deserve to make it this far. Yes, so does the other team. They probably also think that. So you have to try to take it one game at a time. Everybody wants a good draw. But like I said, I'm a firm believer that if you come into a tournament and you're a team that's worried about path or draw, you've already lost. You've already lost because it's one game at a time, and it's the opponent that's right in front of you. And I'll say this too. I mentioned everyone being good. A lot of talk about Illinois, Arizona in the Sweet 16. There's no guarantee that Arizona gets past Seton Hall or TCU. The crazier things have happened in this tournament. No one's a shoe-in, and it's amazing how all of that flips from round to round. Who you think you may be matched up with in a potential Elite Eight, who you actually get matched up with is gonna floor you, and that's what makes this tournament so amazing. Let's play it out, right? Illinois makes it to a Sweet 16. Now they're playing Seton Hall, who knocked off Arizona. That Seton Hall team's just as dangerous, in my opinion. Wind at their back. We're an 8 seed. Let's let it fly. I mean, we're already in a Sweet 16. Why not? Like, those doesn't matter who you're playing, because the psychology of it is different for every team. And you could come into it saying, "Oh, we're gonna play spoiler here. We're playing Arizona. We're gonna upset them, revenge." And then what? Then you got to flip it around. You have to be the team that is just, what? Doesn't matter who we're playing, because in order for us to achieve our goal, we got to play the team right in front of us, and that's Chattanooga right now. And look, this is a good opponent. It's a good 13 seed. They're a good mid-major team, but they're going to have their hands full with Illinois. They are. And we can get into more of the nuts and bolts, but I think this is a really, really good matchup for Illinois, as it should be as a 4-13. But we've seen some of these other 13s playing 4s that I personally would not like to see. But Chattanooga, not to say that Illinois is just going to roll over them, but Illinois is pretty good in a lot of areas against this particular team.
Yeah, so let's dive into that, Mike. Malachi Smith is a Belleville kid, averaging 20 points, one of the best players in the Southern Conference, of course. Silvio De Sousa, we know that name. Orlando Antigua got Illinois involved in that recruitment. Maybe a good thing Illinois didn't win that recruitment, but obviously talented, is a big man, former top 40 prospect. And Baptiste is hit a lot of big threes, none bigger than the other day to win the conference tournament. But what do you see? I know you've looked at them a little bit. Like, what are the things they do well? What are the things Illinois can exploit?
Look, like you mentioned, Malachi is a guy I know from being at Wright State. I wasn't teammates with him, but I was around Dayton. I was around the program when he was there. He's a really good kid. He's a really good player. He's had a tremendous year, SoCon Player of the Year, obviously, and that tandem of him and Baptiste, they were fantastic in that league. And De Sousa has been a really solid addition to what they wanted to kind of build, what Lamont Paris wanted to build there. But here's the reality: they are very thin at a lot of different positions. And when I say thin, I'm not talking physically. I'm saying depth-wise. Outside of Baptiste and Smith, they really don't have another guard that can go. Outside of De Sousa, who only plays 19, 20 minutes a game, they are really thin at that big man spot. So you're going to have to probably play De Sousa 30 minutes in this game. And I think the more you play De Sousa, the better it is for Illinois offensively, because he has a tough time moving his feet. I think you can put him in a lot of ball screen scenarios. You're obviously going to post Kofi a ton. They guard the three well, by the numbers. And a lot of people can fall in love with analytics, and, they're first in their conference in guarding the three at 30%. But part of it's because the threes that they are giving up are pretty well contested. And all the rest of the baskets, people are scoring in the paint. Mm-hmm. They don't do a good job of keeping the ball in front. Smith and Baptiste are pretty handsy defenders. So you got to take care of the ball. But once you get past that first line of defense, there's not much there. So I think you just got to take care of it. Shot selection's got to be at an all-time high, because you can get really good shots. And just like any other team in the tournament, any other game in the tournament, you talk about Drexel last year, any of these teams where you are favored, it comes down to shot quality on both sides. And that's it. And taking care of the ball. You can force tough shots defensively and manufacture good shots offensively. The scoreboard kind of takes care of itself.
Yeah. Mike, there's given the anxiety around the fan base, the players, when they heard their name announced, were just kind of like, Brad Underwood's the only one standing up. It was kind of business-like. But I also asked Brad Underwood about, the pressure that this team probably unduly has to have because of 2 years ago, they didn't get to play in the tournament. Last year, they lose in the second round with this big upset. So the fan base feels that anxiety of, hey, this year we got to do it. Otherwise we might not be able to have a chance without Kofi and Ayo Dosunmu here. How does a player handle the pressure of the NCAA tournament and balance that with just the thrill of playing in this, right? So I think the anxiety might be even more for fans than the players, because the players have been dreaming about this their entire lives, and they get another chance at this. And Illinois has been chomping at the bit for this all year.
It's real. The anxiety is real. And I think that goes for really any team in the NCAA tournament. Sans, some of the lower seeds, they can kind of just come in guns a-blazing and see what happens, see if you can keep it close, see if you can knock off a higher seed. But no matter how you slice it, there's anxiety with this one and done. Not only is it one and done, but your season's over. And there's 67 teams that are going to experience that. And how you experience that and the way in which you experience that tends to sit with you for a whole offseason. And we went through that last year with Loyola. Loyola's a really good team. I think Loyola's going to beat Ohio State. I don't think that's a good matchup for the Buckeyes. And as a player and I think as a coach too, what you tend to rely on is, hey, well, how are my guys in the locker room? I mean, I heard Chris Beard at a press conference the other day saying, my guys don't know how to win. My guys this, they got all they think they have it all figured out. I don't think that's this Illinois locker room. I think with Trent Frazier, I think with these guys that they have a good head on their shoulders. And I think that Loyola loss last year is going to pay dividends, because I think you just kind of take the moment for what it is. There maybe was a little more anxiety last year because you're a 1 seed and there's so much expected. It's amazing how we shift the expectations. It's like when you're the 1 seed, it's like everybody's thinking about, well, who do we play in the Elite Eight and who do we play in the Sweet 16? And then when you're like a 4 or 5 seed, it's like, God, second round matchup in the Sweet 16. Like you keep moving the goalpost. And all of that is just BS because you have to take care of who's in front of you. And you can get the rug pulled out from under you in any round. Doesn't matter. I think about the Gonzaga team that we played my freshman year. We won at Gonzaga. We beat them at Gonzaga. But they were a 1 seed. They beat Southern by, I think, 5 in the first round as a 1. And then they lost the second round to Wichita State, who ended up going all the way to the Final Four. So you never know what can happen. And just because, I think we put a lot into it because of whatever numbers slapped next to the team's name. All of a sudden that makes you think of a team a certain way, or this team's underrated because they have a 12 next to their name, or they're overrated because they have a 3 next to their name. And it really doesn't matter. I think that just like the Iowa game, I think the more you can balance out, like I said, knowing what the moment is, okay, it's the NCAA tournament, we got the season on the line, that should motivate you in certain ways. But you say, hey, it's another game. This is just another game. We can't cripple ourselves with the anxiety of, oh man, are we gonna, we need to deliver because of what happened last year. Screw last year. Yeah, like last year isn't going to help you other than knowing what this moment is and how quickly it can go by. So, of course, a lot of anxiety for coaches, for players, for fans. But Jeremy, that's kind of what makes this tournament pretty damn good, isn't it?
Dang right. It's what makes it flawed, but why we love it so much. Like it doesn't always do the best job of crowning the best team. Illinois was one of the 5 best teams in the country last year, right? Even the loss doesn't take that away. But what is remembered is they lost that. And that's the downside of the tournament. Mike, I want to ask you about another tournament. Illinois loses first game, quarterfinal against Indiana. I didn't have like a huge take after that one because you said shot quality before. I thought the shot quality was really good. I thought the defense was really good when the shots weren't going in. You just missed free throws. You missed layups. Do you have what's kind of your lingering feeling after a disappointing loss to Indiana that obviously gave them a chance to get into the field here?
Yeah, look, I don't want to poo-poo the Big Ten tournament because you won it last year. It's hard to sit here and be like, it doesn't mean much, and then you win it last year, and it's like, this is amazing. It's amazing. It's just so you can't really play that game. I think you can kind of take it for what it's worth and understand that as much as you want to win the Big Ten tournament, it really rarely has any bearing on what you do in the NCAA tournament. We've seen that in the past. I mean, go back to last year's Final Four. I know that's the goal for Illinois. Baylor, right? They win the national championship. They got bounced in their second game against Oklahoma State. UCLA loses in their first Pac-12 tournament game to Oregon State, goes all the way to the Final Four. Go back, no tournament in 2020, but 2019, Texas Tech lost their, Final Four team, went to the national championship, runner-up, lost their first Big 12 tournament game to West Virginia, got bounced. Auburn ran the table, Michigan State ran the table. And Virginia was a national champion and lost to Florida State in the second round or in their second game of the ACC tournament. So, it's all over the place. It's hard to really draw one conclusion and say it doesn't matter. It's hard to say that it is absolutely what matters because you've seen teams do both. I think it's just, hey, are you playing good basketball heading into it? I think that's really the biggest question. And right now, you lose to Indiana off some missed free throws, you lose to Indiana off some missed layups. And if that's your thing going into the tournament, you're in a pretty good spot. If you looked and said, hey, they're really struggling guarding ball screens, they're really struggling defending the 3. Oh man, they're getting whipped on the glass. Those are 3 things that you do not want to be struggling with when you go in the NCAA tournament. And that's not what Illinois is struggling with. I really don't think Illinois is struggling right now at all. I think part of it is, can you get these pieces to mesh in time? And I think we're seeing a little bit of that. I think we'll probably get into Andre Curbelo, I'm assuming, and it is a topic that I'm pretty passionate about. But can you make it all work? And are you worried about all of that? Like, I think all of this is going to come down, like it does. Kofi's a big part of this, and I think Kofi, like you mentioned, comes in as somewhat of a guardrail, right, for the rest of these games, like we had talked about before. It's guard play, man. Yep. It's guard play in this tournament. It always is. And can you get a clicking Trent Frazier offensively? We know what he brings defensively. And I'll mention too, like a lot of what he brings defensively can impact that end, the offensive end. I mean, he expends a lot of energy on that end. And Plummer, like, can you catch him during a 6-game stretch on a heater. And all of that is going to be the question. But I will say for this team right now, the encouragement that I've gotten specifically with Andre Curbelo, and I know we'll peel the onion back a little bit more, but with him, I think what he brings to your team is that, and you'll see it, we'll do the film review and I'll show you the difference. When he was out, and I'll get into all that later, that this team was at a torrid stretch shooting from three, over 50% over a certain amount of games. And that's what that team was in that moment. It was a live and die by the three type of team. And it was live and die by the three and Kofi. And now I think what you're seeing with Andre and his kind of being able to come out these last couple games, Michigan was great against Iowa. I thought he was great against Indiana. I know he just missed some layups. He gives you a couple different looks to where you can score offensively in different ways. I just don't think you want to be the team going into the tournament. It's like, hope we make threes.
Yep.
And that's it. So it's a different element. It's a different dynamic. And Coleman Hawkins adds that too. But I think there's a lot to be hopeful about going into Friday.
Trent Frazier's had an amazing year. Alfonso Plummer has given this team so much. The one thing I didn't like from the Indiana game, more than anything, more than missed shots for Curbelo, was Trent, late in the game not executing, or Alfonso Plummer passing up shots. I don't like that stuff. I'd rather a guy make a mistake out of aggression like Curbelo than a guy kind of passing up shots. And we've seen DeMonte Williams do that at times recently. Is there any concern about that kind of passiveness? I mean, it's not usually a thing with Alfonso Plummer. He did take 12 shots before he started passing up shots. But Trent, I think we've seen that. It's like, hey, you're the man at times. Like, you can be aggressive and hunt your shots.
The Plummer stuff was concerning against Indiana, but I'll say this too. I'm glad it happened against Indiana, because I think you're going to have coaches and teammates in his ear all week, show him on film, passing it up with 1 second left in the shot clock. Hey man, you can't do it. I don't care if you miss. By the way, I think I said J.R. Smith on a podcast preview. It was Deion Waiters. So same thing. I'd rather go 0 for 19 than go 0 for 6, because that means I stopped shooting. And that's the thing with Alfonso Plummer right now. Time and situation maybe comes into play, but for the most part, man, be thankful that you have as green a light as you do, and that the shots that you take aren't typically bad shots, because we've seen you hit them. And yeah, that's a concern. And I think with Trent, we've seen over the years, this Illinois team's had a lot of success, with him as an off guard as well. So I don't really buy into the nature that's like, oh my God, we're a worse team when Trent doesn't have the ball in his hands and isn't like making things happen offensively. That's a lot to put on a guy that is doing a lot defensively as well. And I think that's the beauty of him and Andre, is they're both very, very good defensively, and they're both good with the ball in their hands. So I think you can take a little bit of a load off each other. And I think that's kind of the game that you can play. Now, the real question is, how can you mix and match these lineups to where you got Trent, you got Andre, and you got Alfonso Plummer all on the floor at the same time? We've seen it happen. We've seen it work. But can you get creative with that to where you're not playing a team that's, a Houston that's top 5 in the country on the offensive glass, and you're getting whipped there? So, that's why I love watching this game. That's why I love watching, see like what adjustments coaches make, because each team presents a different type of challenge. So with those two, with I think if you get a good Plummer and Frazier offensively, and a focused Plummer defensively, you can do something. I mean, you can make a run at this thing. You can absolutely make a run at this thing.
What is the importance of Jacob Grandison? I thought they missed him the other day. Just to have a guy willing to take a shot, longer guy, gets a shot off easily. What would be the importance of getting him back, even if it's 85% of Jacob Grandison?
Stability. I think stability is the first word that comes to mind with him. I think he's very assignment sound defensively. He's not Tony Allen by any means, but you'd be surprised what being in the right spot can do for your defense. So he has that. He brings that defensively. He flies around. He tips balls around. He can grab defensive rebounds, offensive rebounds. But he's a 41% three-point shooter. Adding that to your team and adding what he can do. And then the other thing I'll say too is he's their best post-entry passer. Right? We saw Coleman once again stare down Kofi with 2.5 minutes left in that game against Indiana and get the ball tipped. Jake's really good at that. That's what Jake's excelled at all year. So you add that back to this team, and you just add another guy with experience that was on that court against Loyola, that understands how quickly this thing can go, and sense of urgency. Falling down 9 in the first 5 minutes, it's not great. You don't always have a bunch of time to come back and get it back and get the next game to get back on track. It's this game, and it's this game now. And I think Jake Grandison's another guy that understands that. So having him out there, but even though I just see him on the bench, and I think you can tell the difference sometimes with some guys, and sometimes it's reading a little bit further into it. But when guys are out and they're a little bit closer to the front of the bench, with the coaches, with the guys that are in the game there, engaged, talking. I mean, I think you saw that from him on the sideline, and that's a great teammate, and that's somebody I think those guys are going to want on the floor here.
Mike, I don't know if there's ever been a more polarizing Illinois player than Andre Curbelo. I know the internet is not the place to have nuanced conversation, but it's really hard to have a nuanced conversation about Andre Curbelo right now. While other players can make mistakes, Illinois fans kind of give him the benefit of the doubt. Like Coleman Hawkins makes mistakes, right? But like fans love him, and I think they should. He's been so exciting to watch. But I think Andre Curbelo is playing some of his best ball of the season. No, it's not perfect. Yes, it's a roller coaster ride, but he had missed shots against Indiana, and they were really critical to Illinois losing that game, especially the front ends of those 1-on-1s. Like an 80% free throw shooter needs to make those, but he was able to get to the rim, create for his teammates. Defensive rebounding is so necessary. Like Kofi needs help, and Coleman and Curbelo give that to him. And then defensively, I just think Curbelo's played as well as anybody the last couple of weeks defending, and that includes Trent Frazier. So I've become an apologist for Andre Curbelo. I guess some people would call me that, but I just see so much value in what he's bringing, especially what we're talking about with Trent Frazier and Alfonso Plummer going through struggles. If those guys don't shoot well, you have Andre Curbelo, who can be another way to get offense. And if you have Hawkins making shots and Grandison making shots and Kofi doing his normal thing, you can survive a bad night without Plummer or Frazier hitting shots. So I just want to get your opinion on the polarizing Andre Curbelo, because I know most people rooting for him, supporting him. There's a lot of people that just don't like watching him for whatever reason, even though Brad Underwood played him 27 minutes the other night for a reason.
The Curbelo stuff has become so convoluted to the point where I'm not even sure at times what people are arguing or what their stance is. And I know you can you can just pick off little things to fit your narrative. If your argument is, hey, he's out of control sometimes. Okay. If your argument is, hey, I wish he'd be a little bit more of a perimeter threat, shooting the ball behind the arc. All right. I'll give you that. But if you're in the camp of this team has a higher ceiling and they are just better with him out of uniform and off the court, I don't know what to tell you, because it's just not true. It's not true. And if the one thing that you go to point to is, Mike, but they were 13-1 when he didn't play. Well, let's break that down. 8 of those teams aren't even going to the tournament of those 13 wins. And the other teams that they beat without Curbelo, Iowa beat him with Curbelo, Michigan beat him with Curbelo, Michigan State beat him with Curbelo, Northwestern beat him with Curbelo. So I mean, it's okay to just say that, hey, I don't know, there's something about it, I just don't like it. But to say that you have an argument that's rooted in, because everybody falls in love with the analytics, right? Well, look at on the court versus off the court. Look at, and when you compare him to his teammates, that's just not fair. One, because I'm sure Curbelo, you throw a St. Francis game in there, you throw a UT River Grand Valley or any of these other games in there, then it's going to look a little bit closer. He came back from injury when this schedule really ramped up. Yeah. I mean, it was a pretty light schedule to start that Big Ten slate in the games that he missed. But I'll say this too. You may think he's a little bit out of control, but I would absolutely implore anyone to go back and watch that Indiana game and go back and watch that Iowa game. Watch this guy defensively. And you touched on it. If it weren't for Trent Frazier, and I say that lightly because Andre's been pretty damn good the last few weeks here defensively. If it weren't for Trent Frazier, Andre's the best defender on this team, and I'm not sure it's close. And the value that you can put into that, especially you mentioned the defensive rebounding.
Mm-hmm.
You win this Chattanooga game, you got Houston. You're going to need some help. And to have a guard like that who can, like Andre Felice was, rebounding, talk about, range rebounding, getting rebounds that are out of your range because of your size, because of your height. Having range rebounders is huge. Having guys that can rebound out of position is absolutely huge. And I'll say this too, break down the Indiana game. Curbelo checks in, 17-8 run. And that's including Omar Payne missing a wide open alley-oop dunk. Okay, so let's call it a 19-8 run. Just like that. 13-9, 26-21. Just like that. And he came in, he changed the tempo, he changed the pace. And we'll show it in the film breakdown. Making simple plays. Like he made a lot of really, really simple plays. Iowa, let's go back to Iowa. From the 11-minute mark, when Andre Curbelo was in the game, to 2:19 when he fouled out, a top 5 offense in the country scored 6 points. And I'm not saying that it was solely Andre Curbelo. There were 4 other guys in the court. But if he is this, we are much better without him type of guy, then those things wouldn't happen. I was on Twitter the other day, and when you throw something out there and then all of a sudden there's these sub-arguments going on in your mentions, and you see all of them, they're still tagged in all of them. And one guy said, hey, I go back and watch what he did defensively against Iowa. And another guy chimed in and said, hey, that's one game. Yeah, well, that one game won your regular season title. Mm-hmm. And the way that he plays, he is the type of guy. And if your argument is, well, at the point guard position, he could lose us a game in the NCAA tournament. Yeah, welcome to every other team in the NCAA tournament. Every point guard, literally every point guard in the NCAA tournament, if they have a bad game, their team is likely going home. So that's what I think isn't fair about Andre Curbelo. And I get it, preseason expectations. I'm sure that plays a part, no doubt. But to sit here and say that this team would somehow reach a Final Four or achieve the things that they want to achieve without Andre Curbelo, it's asinine is what it is.
Yeah, it's really weird for me that like the reaction is still like it's the Marquette game happened last week. I feel like some people can't get that Marquette game out of their head.
I think it scarred a lot of people. I think it did. Yeah. I think it scarred a lot of people.
And we got to remember, he was probably concussed during that game. And he had the weight of the world on his shoulders. He's a sophomore trying to carry a team without Kofi Coburn. And he had a terrible game, an absolutely terrible game. And I know he's had weird moments along this way, but he just doesn't get the benefit of the doubt with a lot of people, even though I think in the Penn State game, he wasn't great, Mike, but he was great against Michigan. I know there's turnovers there, but he's going to have turnovers. Like he's going to make some mistakes. He's a point guard. Iowa, fantastic. Scored or assisted on 15 of the last 20 points. As you said, Illinois held Iowa to 6 points over the last couple minutes. And Indiana, I thought he was as good of a floor game as we've seen this year. And I thought he was the best defensive player on the court. And Brad Underwood said he did. He graded out as well as anybody. He just missed shots. And that's the stuff I'm not as worried about. So if you want to go into the metrics, yeah, like he's had a bad, efficient year offensively, but I think that kind of ignores the progress he's making and the impact he's made winning those last 3 regular season games and then having a chance to win against Indiana. Like that to me is encouraging, just as Coleman Hawkins. Everybody's aboard the Coleman Hawkins train, even though he still makes some mistakes. But both those players are flashy. They're sophomores, so they make mistakes, but they definitely elevate this team heading into the tournament because they're a big reason this team was able to win a regular season championship at the end of the year.
You talked about the missed layups and the missed free throws. He's got to make those. Yeah. And it's not going to happen every game. So I'm not going to sit here and say like, hey, missed a couple of layups and free throws in one game. That's not a reason to say that a guy had a bad game or he was bad today, because he wasn't. And I think you'll see anyone that sticks around for the film session, the layup that he had at the end that he missed, they don't even get the chance to do that without him. Mm-hmm. They don't. He takes a charge on a 4-on-1 break, plays the cat and mouse game, makes Race Thompson think that he can throw the lob to Trace Jackson Davis, pulls it back the last second and is indecisive, and that's what leads to the charge. That's what you're taught in 3-on-2, 2-on-1. And and then he makes a lot of really good feeds to Kofi. He throws the ball into him. He fakes the ball or fakes a pass, Race Thompson jumps to one side. Then it leaves Kofi one-on-one with Trace Jackson-Davis, throws over the top, foul. Kofi makes 2 free throws. You're up 63-62 with 33 seconds left. And Kofi tries to go for a steal and fouls Trace Jackson-Davis. That doesn't happen. We get out of this game, and it's amazing. You lose the game 65-63, and I did post-game radio. And 3 points. You win that game 66-65, it's amazing how much different the narrative is.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. Curbelo makes that layup. He was fantastic today.
One of the stars of the game.
Stars of the game. And now it's, I think, the Marquette game. And he had one Marquette moment in that game. And I think for some reason, it's what scares people, because that game was bad. Like, that Marquette game was bad. And Andre would be the first one to tell you. It was bad. He didn't involve his teammates. He didn't trust his teammates. But I think you haven't seen a ton of that since he's been back. And now he had that one shot. He had that one shot on the baseline that reminded me a lot of Marquette. And that was it. It's some things too, as a coach, like, you can see, guys on the bench like, oh my God. But some of the passes he made, the skip pass to Coleman Hawkins, the throw up the court to Coleman Hawkins is just, it's unbelievable stuff. And it's stuff that when he hits singles and then, it gets you lulled to sleep with these singles and then hits you with the big play. I mean, that's the type of stuff that can propel you in this tournament. And it is point guard play. And luckily, whether it's Curbelo or whether it's Trent, you have 2 guys that, when they're right, are pretty damn good and can take you pretty far in this tournament.
Yeah, and I want to make the point. He has flaws to his game. We know.
No question.
Like, there are flaws to his game, but I think he's starting to minimize those, play as within the team. But I just think the positives he brings, some people, not all fans, but some people just choose to ignore or not see for whatever reason it is. And I don't understand it, because there are other players that have bad games here too. Like, Kofi had a bad game against Ohio State, right? Like, it happens.
Plummer.
They're going to have them. But to have a guy like Curbelo, yeah, Plummer's had bad games. Trent's had bad games. But like, to have a guy like Curbelo to add to the mix that's actually helping your team over the last couple of weeks, I think people just need to see it, right? Like, that's actually happening. He's really helping.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say too is, I think the difference right now between an Alfonso Plummer and an Andre Curbelo could turn the ball over 3 times, could turn the ball over 4 times, and his value on the defensive end still holds a ton of weight, to where you're like, we kind of have to keep him on the floor because this game's about getting stops. When Alfonso Plummer is passing up shots, his value drops immensely for this team. It does. It just does. And when you're talking about being able to compare, all right, what he brings to the defensive end compared to Andre Curbelo, and there were moments in that Indiana game where they were playing together and they were getting stopped. So it's certainly possible. But Andre has really, a lot of people look at the 1 for 7. They look at the misses on the free throw line, and he wasn't extremely efficient against Iowa either from the field. I don't know what he ended up being, 5 for 12, maybe it was, which isn't crazy. Watch him defensively. That's really all I have to say, is watch him defensively. It's the instincts, the awareness, and it's not just roaming around. We played Angel Rodriguez when I was in college, and we played at Miami. And Angel Rodriguez on the scouting report, we called him a roamer. He was a roamer. He just kind of roamed around, and he hurt his team because he did it, because he was always looking for steals in the passing lanes and always looking. That's not what Andre Curbelo is. He's very opportunistic with when he does roam, when he does leave Parker Stewart to go steal when it's not even his help, to go steal a pass from Trace Jackson-Davis. Opportunistic with it and very instinctual, and always looking to box his guy out. I think that's the other thing that, just as a guy who just loves watching that stuff, watch it anytime a shot goes up. His head's on a swivel, boxing guys out. He's not a ball watcher. He goes and hits, like that little stuff. I'm telling you, that's what you're graded out on in practice. That's what you're graded out on in games. And hell, that's what keeps you on the floor. It's just what keeps you on the floor. Like, if you're a coach and you're sitting there like, okay, yeah, he may have 2 wonky turnovers in a game, but damn it, he's going to box out every time. He's going to go get the defensive rebound. He's going to make the right play most times. He's a threat. Guys can't keep him out of the paint. I don't know, man. it'd be kind of crazy to keep that on the bench for long extended periods of time, right?
Yeah. All right, Mike, before I let you go, we do got to mention the Coleman Hawkins game didn't lead to a win. 4 of 7 from 3, 18 points. I know he didn't have a bunch of boards in that game, but what can a game like that do for him confidence wise and do for the team to have a threat? Like they got to go guard him on the perimeter now.
Yeah, it should give him a ton of confidence. And look, 18, 19 points, whatever it was against Indiana. Make no mistake about it, Coleman. You are not now our second go-to guy offensively.
Is that the concern? Like that would be my concern.
No, I don't think. Yeah, I don't think that's a concern. I think Coleman's very self-aware and understands those things. The thing you don't want to have happen with Coleman, and I'm confident that it won't happen, is him losing sight of who he is. Like who you are is still energy, effort on the glass. Getting on the floor, like that is still what you bring to this team. 18, 19 points is icing on the cake.
Right.
It is. And I think he knows that. And that's part of what makes a really good locker room is go look at like the role identification problems that Wisconsin had last year. And I mentioned this a lot. I know I talk about the 2020, 2021 Wisconsin team probably more than people want to hear, but it was a perfect example of who's the guy, like who, and then one game can make you think that is you. And it can backfire on you in the next game. And that's what happened. It was, Micah Potter went off one game. Now he's the guy. Now it backfires on Dimitri Trice. I mean, we don't have if you don't have a guy, everyone's the guy, no one's the guy. So Coleman, I think he's added so much value to this team. And specifically in this first round game against Chattanooga, in moments where if Kofi gets 2 fouls or is out of the game, this is a Chattanooga team that you can spread out, that you can go 5 out, and they do not keep the ball in front. They really struggle, especially with their depth. You go past Smith and Baptiste, and they gamble sometimes. You go past that. These are some guys that really, really struggle to keep the ball in front. So that's a Swiss Army knife. Like that's a guy you can insert into those situations. So I've really loved his emergence, and I know I've talked about it a lot on this podcast, and how much how much it says about him as a person, and how much it says about him as a player. And he seems to have a really good support system, and I think that's huge. Not only just support system with your family, but also within those locker rooms and within those locker room walls, and with the coaching staff kind of believing in you, and not just saying he's throw him in the junkyard. He's his minutes have gone down. He's not producing. He's really resurrected his game this year, and shoot, it couldn't come at a better time, right?
Right. So confidence level, Mike, in this Illini team heading into the tournament. Obviously, you want to get to the Sweet 16. I feel like that week will be so important for Illini fans to just savor their basketball program. But Houston is a tough team. I know they're missing a lot of guys because of injury, but they've been tough all year, can provide some matchup issues. But just Illinois as a team, regardless of matchup, how do you feel confident level going into March?
I feel good. I think, like I mentioned, there aren't any alarming issues right now heading into the tournament. I know the 3-point shooting is dipped, but we've seen this team capable. They could hit 13 threes on Friday. Yeah, it's very possible. And then that they could have shooting propel them to the next round. And look, they've kind of rectified the rebounding a little bit. I know they took a slide a little bit, but I think Coleman being in there a little bit more has helped in that regard. And the emergence, like you mentioned, of Curbelo and Hawkins is going to be huge in the way that you can deploy different lineups and give teams different looks, and not just sit there and be like, hey, hope we make threes tonight. I think that's a big deal, and that's not a luxury that most teams have in the tournament. There are a lot of teams that don't have a post presence like Kofi. You run into a stifling defense, you're not getting down those gaps to free open looks. Now you're relying on contested threes to win you the game. And look, that's tough to do. So moving forward, look, we look at Chattanooga. I love that matchup for Illinois when it comes to the 13-4. In Houston, if you said, hey, you got Houston in the round of 32, if you asked someone 6 months ago, hey, you got Houston in the round of 32 without their top 2 scorers, would you take that? You probably would. It's a toughness game, and this team doesn't lack toughness. So we've seen them in those games, and they don't wilt. And I think that's another element in the NCAA tournament. Not just being the team that's like, I hope we win by 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, because if it comes down to late game execution, And I get it. Trent throws the ball out of bounds, but there are a lot of things that happened at an Indiana game that should just be reminders for these guys. Oh, you know what? We're taking care of the ball better in the last 4 minutes of the game. Oh, yeah, you know what, Plummer? I'm not passing up shots. I'm letting it fly.
Mm-hmm.
All that stuff is huge. Kofi should be very confident. He went toe-to-toe with Trace Jackson-Davis and pretty much got the better of him. I know Trace had a hell of a game too, but
yeah, Trace had an unbelievable game and Kofi canceled him out. Right.
For sure.
To have that luxury is pretty awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what I look at with this team. There aren't just schematic issues, fundamental issues with getting beat on the glass and not being able to keep guys in front, not being able to be potent in ball screen defense. And I know that reared its head against Loyola last year, and they just ran the same action over and over again. But look, again, it's good that it happened because you have a whole off season to look at it. This is how we would attack it next time. And if it happens, you're right there. So I think this team, and South region's tough, man.
Yeah. That's
a tough region. If you're in the Midwest, you're probably feeling a little bit better. But, yeah, anything can happen. I know everybody would love to see that Arizona rematch. Arizona has some things to figure out because if they don't have their starting point guard, that's a big deal as they move forward in the tournament. So I'm excited. I think in order you want to be battle tested as you're getting through this tournament. They were battle tested in the Big Ten. They're going to be battle tested if they make it to a Sweet 16 Elite Eight. It's going to be with a pretty solid slate of teams that they're playing against. So one at a time. You go one at a time and you take care of business. And New Orleans is hey, maybe you book your ticket to New Orleans.
Dreaming. Why not? You can this time of year. Everybody can do it this time of year. Mike LaTulip, you're the goods, man. We will have some VIP film rooms this week. We're going to break down Curbelo, the good and the bad of it, but mostly like what he's doing well here recently. We'll also have a scout on the moccasins. So if you're not on the VIP side, today we're recording this on Monday is your last day to get 50% off a VIP membership. So go and do that because Mike alone, these film room breakdowns are worth that price alone. Mike, you're the goods, man. Have a great NCAA tournament.
Appreciate it, man.